Good evening. We have some open seats up front. I promise we don't bite. You're welcome to join us up here. Our keynote speaker is sitting by herself. I know someone wants to make their way up to a front table. She is wonderful, and we're looking forward to hearing from her. I am so excited by the number of people that we have in this room tonight. It is such a great group of people, and I have seen, as I was just mentioning, it's some of my favorite people, and it's so great to see all of you. Thank you for coming. My name is Shelley O'Quinn, and I am the CEO of Innovia Foundation.
And I'm Aaron McMurray. I'm Chief Strategy Officer, and we are privileged and excited to welcome you to this great annual event, the Innovia Foundation Annual Reception.
This is our annual event to celebrate the impact and generosity of donors and community leaders, and of all of you in this room, and the tremendous work that is happening in our 20-county region. As we do this, please recognize and celebrate the role that all of you have played to make this possible.
Tonight we will share successes and stories of impact. As we do, you'll notice that our theme for the evening, Ignite Generosity, is woven through each of the stories we will tell, because we can't think of a more powerful way we can transform lives and communities than to ignite the generosity of donors, community members, and civic leaders across our region.
We are also looking forward to sharing with you our vision and goals for this coming year and beyond, where we are headed as an organization, and how we intend to live into our mission, vision, and values as your community foundation working to transform lives and communities in this region. To kick off our program tonight, we invite you to turn your attention to the screens for our first story about igniting generosity with one of our beautiful rural communities.
Kind of little, Norman Rockwell-esque type of idyllic community.
You don't have to worry about your children being out on the street.
The people are so friendly. I think that's the best reason for living in a small town.
Generosity is not rare in this town. You see it daily.
People are amazing. They'll chip in money, they'll chip in their time, their labor.
Hardly a day goes by without a news report or article about rural communities struggling across America. From child poverty to shuttered downtown buildings, limited access to quality health care, or young people leaving their hometowns never to return, life in small towns can sometimes feel hopeless. But not in Harrington, Washington. Harrington is a community where passionate leaders and engaged citizens have come together to ignite generosity to ensure that their community is vibrant and sustainable. Innovia Foundation has been privileged to be a part of that story of generosity. First through a grant in 2007 that enhanced the project to renovate and restore the historic Opera House, and today through a $30,000 challenge grant to ignite the generosity for the community around a town square in the heart of Harrington.
The Town Square project is going to be a big deal for our town, and when it's completed, we're going to have a really great spot for people to stop and enjoy our community even more than they can now.
It's going to make downtown look a little bit more complete.
And they're going to have a little gazebo in there and trees and grass. Perfect place for people just to stop and visit.
I'm absolutely amazed that Innovia has come through and provided a grant to help us spark the restoration of that lot, build a town square.
It's basically doubling our own money. So if we put down the money, it's going to be matched by Innovia, and so we couldn't ask for anything more.
There's so many people working on the lot before the funds have even been matched because they're inspired and they want to be a part of it and they want to see it grow. And it just gives us the opportunity to do something that we would in no other way be able to do.
I hope what we're doing sparks entrepreneurs and people that live here, maybe people that want to move here. I want to see people come here and, love this place. It's a great place to be.
My biggest hope is to have a reason for the graduating seniors to want to come back to our community.
It was such a privilege to spend a day in Harrington with those community leaders that you just saw and the voices that you heard. Their passion for their community was so beautiful, and just a reminder for all of us in the work that we do that when people come together around shared goals, they can accomplish anything.
I don't always have the opportunity to attend site visits with the team, but I did have the chance to go to Harrington. What a great community. If you have not had a chance to visit Harrington, I would encourage you to take a Saturday drive. They have a great coffee shop, a beautiful opera house, and soon an amazing town square. And the community has rallied. With the $30,000 matching challenge grant that Innovia provided, the community has raised over $20,000 in matching gifts from community members and alumni of Harrington. So they are well on the way to making their dream a reality. Before we go too far into our program, I would like to give a special thank you to Meg Miller, our board chair, and invite her on stage to provide a warm welcome from the Innovia Board of Directors, and to thank all of our sponsors who've made this evening possible. Thank you, Meg. Meg is the Executive Director of Resort Operations at Northern Quest Casino and serving her 4th year on the Innovia board, and we want to thank her for her leadership and her pursuit of excellence in everything that we do.
Well, and I think we'd have to thank both Shelley, Aaron, and all of the Innovia staff who make these annual receptions possible. So thank each of you guys and the entire staff. And this is merely a day in a year where they work every day to drive the Innovia mission. So honestly, thank you. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the Innovia Board of Directors. So the first thing I need to do is thank and honor my fellow board members. So could you please all stand? Innovia Board. I want to say thank you to your leadership for your leadership and the service that you give to Innovia every single day. Our passion as your community foundation is to serve the people and the communities of Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho. And this work would not be possible without the generosity of our donors and our sponsors. We want to share a special thanks with our annual reception sponsors. Would each of the following sponsor representatives please stand and remain standing so we can thank you all with an applause at the end? Our platinum sponsor this evening is Merrill Lynch, represented by Janice Baldwin, who's an Innovia Foundation board member. I feel like I saw Janice. Oh, hi, Janice. Darren Hand and Steve Harmon. Bob Larson was unable to be with us this evening. Our gold sponsor is Ager Consulting in memory of Molly Van Marter. Jean Ager and Jan Ager Carroll are unable to be with us this evening as they're in the other Washington, D.C., working on behalf of our region. Our silver sponsor this evening is RBC Wealth Management, represented by Kyle Weir, Lauren Graham Company, represented by Lauren Graham, and Kershaw's Office Supply, represented by Diane and Damian Mangano. Our media sponsor this evening is KHQ, and you'll enjoy the results of their sponsorship through the videos captured throughout the evening. And while Patricia McCrae, President and General Manager of KHQ and Q6, is unable to be here, we wanted to give her a special thanks to Patricia and her entire team for their amazing work. So can you please join me in a thank to these sponsors? In addition to these sponsors, the work of Innovia Foundation would not be possible without the generosity of the donors throughout our region. On the poster boards in the foyer, you will see the names of donors who have partnered with Innovia Foundation to drive community transformation. These names are also displayed on the screens behind me through today's program. The names listed in the Anton Albert Legacy Foundation are those who have a planned future gift or have an established endowed fund that will give forever. The foundation welcomed 18 new Legacy Society donors this year. Lifetime benefactors listed in the program have made gifts to Innovia Foundation that have reached cumulative totals of $10,000 or more. 50 new lifetime benefactors were welcomed this year. 15 nonprofit organization agency funds were established this past year in support of their missions. That brings the total number of nonprofit agency funds at Innovia Foundation to 127. Contributions to the Partnership Fund support the Foundation's mission to ignite generosity that transforms lives and communities, and our vision for the region for vibrant and sustainable communities where every person has the opportunity to thrive. Our Partnership Fund donors are listed on the screen throughout the evening. Please pause for a moment in the foyer outside this room and read the names of all these donors whose generosity has been transforming lives in the communities across our region. And to everyone gathered here this evening, we are grateful for your generosity and partnership to drive community transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. We could not do the work we do without you and our entire board. Thank you to the Innovia Foundation Board for your investment in us as a foundation and your service to our region.
We also want to give a special thank you and a shout out to our Emeriti board members, many of whom are with us this afternoon. If you're a member of the Emeriti or a former board member of Innovia Foundation, I'm going to ask you to stand as well. We could not do what we do without your incredible leadership and service through the decades. So would all of our Emeriti board members please stand for a quick round of applause? Thank you very much.
Speaking of Emeriti, Meg commented just now about the sponsorship from Jean Ager and Jan Carroll that was made in honor of Molly Van Marter, who recently passed away. Molly was one of the original founders of the Community Foundation, along with Eleanor Magnuson and Mary Heath. And I just want to pause for a moment and extend our heartfelt gratitude to those three ladies and the others that joined them for their vision and leadership in making your Community Foundation a reality. It's been 45 years, and the impact on your community has been amazing.
In addition to the leadership of our current board members and Emeriti, we could not do what we do every day without our amazing volunteers, over 100 of them. They ground us in our communities. They review and recommend grants and scholarships. They manage our finances and investments, and they inform our work at the foundation. Their service is essential to the delivery of our programs to our communities. A big thank you to all of our volunteers for being such strong advocates and ambassadors to the foundation.
And yes. We do have an amazing group of volunteers, and there are many of them in the room today. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we want to say thank you to the Innovia staff. I love our team. We have such a great team that serves all of you, and I believe they're all here tonight. You saw them in the foyer when you walked in, and you'll see them again as you exit. So please take time to thank them for the work that they do. I am so grateful for their commitment, dedication, and passion for the work that we do, and I truly believe that with our Rockstar team, we can make this part of the world better. So thank you to the team for inspiring me daily with your compassion and commitment to the work that we do.
Yes. Serving our region is truly why we exist. For over 45 years, Innovia Foundation has been this region's partner in philanthropy, distributing more than $79 million to nonprofit organizations doing important work locally, nationally, and internationally. And this work is only possible because of the trust placed in Innovia Foundation by donors who believe in the promise of a better region.
The trust of donors is evidenced by the foundation's growth. This last year alone, we received over $9.5 million in contributions. 51 new funds were established, bringing our total number of new funds to 551. And total foundation assets have grown to over $135 million.
As a result of all of this growth, last year the foundation distributed a record $6.9 million in grants to nonprofits and community-wide initiatives throughout our region. And we thank all of you and our donors for making this possible.
We share these numbers with you because they are an important way for us to measure the impact of the work of our donors that you're having in our community. But the numbers do not reflect why we do what we do. Behind these numbers are stories of the lives and communities that are being transformed. And those are the stories at the heart and passion of why we do the work that we do every day. Our highlights from this past year will show you how these numbers are impacting the communities that we serve in a very real way.
We started this evening by highlighting our commitment to rural communities. And while many of our initiatives have taken place in Spokane and Kootenai counties, we believe that vibrant and sustainable rural communities are critical to the overall economic and social well-being of our region.
Another highlight of our work is our commitment to show up. We believe that in order to know our communities, we have to be in our communities. In order to know the needs, the opportunities, and most importantly, the people that live there, we have to show up.
And show up we did. In fact, Shelley has challenged us all the way along to be on the road and to show up in communities. This past year, our staff logged over 204 days and over 16,500 miles out of the office, engaging in communities across our region. To put that in context, it's 24,901 miles to travel around the world, so we drove enough miles to go 2/3 of the way around planet Earth.
Said another way, it's just over 3,000 miles to travel I-90 from Seattle to Boston, and so we spent enough travel time to cross North America over 5 times. In addition to our time spent in our communities, we've also put an intentional focus on investing in our rural region. In the last 2 years alone, we have invested just shy of $3 million in our rural grant making.
Another highlight from this past year has been the impact of our work around using data to measure impact, as well as to identify the greatest opportunities and needs in communities. Our colleague Mason Burley, Director of Research and Community Impact, has been a tremendous addition to our team, expanding our ability to partner with nonprofits and other community organizations, to collect data around needs and opportunities, and to better measure the impact of our donors' charitable investments.
One example of this work has been Mason's leadership of a 10-county community needs assessment that we are doing in partnership with the new Elsie Valley Healthcare Foundation in Lewiston, Idaho. After several months in the field and with survey data in hand, our team spent this past week on the road hosting community meetings and data walks. We traveled from Pullman and Moscow to Lewiston, Grangeville, and Orofino to meet with community leaders and engaged citizens, over 330 of them actually, to share the health needs data and to hear about their greatest challenges, opportunities, and most importantly, their dreams for their community.
All of this work will culminate in a philanthropic strategic plan for the Elsie Valley Healthcare Foundation as they begin to make charitable investments. The impact could be incredible, as they have over $1 million a year to invest in our communities starting this year and for generations to come.
I want to provide a quick shout out to our other funding partners for this project. Additional support was provided by our friends at Avista, Primera Social Impact, and Idaho Community Foundation. Thanks to them for their support on this great project.
That's great. A final highlight of our work from this past year has been our continued investment in community-wide initiatives. While Innovia Foundation will always award grants directly to nonprofits doing important and transformational work in our communities, we also believe in the power of larger scale initiatives that address complex and systemic issues that no single organization could accomplish on their own. Last year, we shared at this event about Opening Books, Opening Doors, a community-wide partnership to ensure that by 2020, all students in the Coeur d'Alene School District exiting 3rd grade experience a deep love of reading and can meet grade-level proficiency goals, including reading comprehension and fluency. We want to take this opportunity to acknowledge our co-funders, Numerica Credit Union, Mountain West Bank, Boughton Construction, Columbia Trust Bank, and the University of Idaho. We are grateful to each of these incredible organizations. Their generosity has ignited the generosity of the entire Coeur d'Alene community around this initiative.
As we enter the third year of this initiative, we are increasing our focus on the importance of an entire community coming together to ensure that every child has the opportunity to read. This is not just the responsibility of our schools. Together, we can make a difference. This last week, we launched this book campaign. So please turn your attention to the screens to see how Opening Books, Opening Doors aspires to change the culture of an entire community around reading literacy.
Opening Books, Opening Doors originated out of CDA 2030's visioning process. What did we want Coeur d'Alene to look like in 2030? Our goal is to make sure that every third grader in the Coeur d'Alene district reads at grade level.
I think the way that we approach reading and thinking in our classrooms now allows kids to express themselves on a very deep and meaningful level.
Soon they start to realize, oh my gosh, this is who I am. But it unfolds for them, and so that unfolding process is one of the most amazing, to me, scenarios that happens.
Not only does it benefit the kids themselves, it opens doors and opportunities for them. It also removes barriers, socioeconomic barriers. It helps our community because it grows our economy. It actually also even fights crime. Third grade literacy is critical to our entire community. Launched in 2019 by the Opening Books, Opening Doors initiative, this book calls on every member of the community to give of their time, talent, and resources in big and small ways. Read to a child, donate a book, and build a stronger community.
That hungry curiosity for what else there is to learn, I think that's really the basis of being a really engaged citizen and a lifelong learner. And the more we read, I think the better prepared we are to empathize with other people's situations and be equipped to act responsibly.
When you get kids to understand what they're reading and to fall in love with what they're reading, it only makes them want to do more and accomplish more and set goals for themselves. And books are one of the best ways to do that.
When they take those strides forward, I feel like it builds their confidence and they start to love it. The thing that I noticed even last year was they felt important, they felt valued, and that they were important enough that someone took time and spent money so that they could succeed. We have a lot of kiddos who are struggling, and those gifts of the books that you guys give to us, I just couldn't be more thankful for them, you know? Like if I was their mom, I'd be saying, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now what we really want is the community to be engaged, to read to a child, to donate a book, to create a library in a public classroom. If we can get the community to build a culture, that culture will be sustainable. So it's not just 3 years, it's forever.
Read to a child, donate a book, help build a stronger community today.
I want to give a shout out to Amy Voyer. She's our Opening Books, Opening Doors program manager. She joined us in February and hit the ground running and has done an amazing job in Coeur d'Alene. While we are launching this initiative in Coeur d'Alene, our dream is that this will be a region-wide initiative. So we invite you to take a poster and put it in your office, a local waiting room, or your favorite coffee shop. Please take the time to donate a book, read to a child, and build a stronger community. We can make an impact, one book and one child at a time.
Over the years, our annual reception has been an opportunity to highlight the impact and to celebrate the generosity of our donors. But it's also an important opportunity for us to share our vision, our passion, and our goals for the future. This past year, our team worked through a robust strategic planning process that allowed us to clarify our mission, vision, and values. This process included broad participation from staff, from board members, volunteers, and stakeholders, over 100 hours of time invested working together to dream and envision the impact Innovia Foundation could have for every person and every community in our region.
What Aaron failed to mention was that 100 hours was times 7 people. It was a significant investment of our time, but it resulted in a strategic framework for our future that we all own. In May, our board adopted our new mission and vision statements, which we love living into every day. Our mission is to ignite generosity that transforms lives and communities. And our vision for our 20-county region is vibrant and sustainable communities where every person has the opportunity to thrive. As we live into our mission and vision for this region, we are committed to our core values to be innovative, inclusive, and collaborative in everything we do.
By innovative, we mean that thinking differently is in our name. We seek and explore new approaches and perspectives to address what matters most to the people and the communities we serve.
By inclusive, we take a stand that we are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We seek and embrace the participation and perspective of people and communities that reflect the region we serve.
And by collaborative, we acknowledge that we cannot do this work alone. We value the transformative power of partnerships based on mutual interests, trust, and respect. And in the case of this afternoon, good wine. But anybody who's ever done strategic planning, you know that strategic plans and mission statements and vision statements, they have a way of ending up on a shelf collecting dust. And so we're standing here today to commit that we intend to live into this new plan every single day.
And we hope that you will join us in living into our strategic framework. We won't walk through the entire framework tonight, though it is short. But we do want to highlight our strategic focus areas, as they will be the lens through which we prioritize and organize our work in the coming years. As you leave tonight, we will hand you a complete copy of the framework, so please make sure you remember to grab one.
And our first strategic focus area, which you're already familiar with as it's our theme for this evening, is Ignite Generosity. We believe that generosity is the most powerful source of positive change to achieve our shared goals and values. So much so that our keynote speaker this evening will be sharing an exciting initiative that will flow through this strategic focus area that we've launched around transfer of wealth. And it directly ties to our passion to ignite generosity across our region.
Our second strategic focus area is vibrant and sustainable communities. Strong, vibrant communities are able to confront challenges, nurture the good, and create positive change. Such communities require committed leadership and engagement among community members from diverse backgrounds and experiences. As we live into our commitment to vibrant and sustainable communities, we know that we cannot do this work alone. With a small staff in a region that covers nearly 40,000 square miles and 1 million people, we know that our bandwidth is limited. So in order to reach into our communities in a greater way, we recently announced our intent to launch local leadership councils that will play a vital role in our work in the 20 counties. Leadership councils members will serve as ambassadors for our region and also advisors to the foundation and advocates for philanthropy. So we are currently seeking members for these positions, and we would invite you to join us. If you're interested, you can find out more information online or grab one of our staff tonight.
And finally, our third strategic focus area is every person thrives. We believe individuals thrive in community. Genuine connection and authentic relationships drive lasting and sustainable impact. Each of us matters. And if opportunities are not available to everyone, a community cannot move forward together. We've talked this evening about community-wide initiatives, and you heard a bit about Opening Books, Opening Doors. Actually, both of Innovia Foundation's strategic community initiatives have been projects that address the opportunity gap around student educational achievement. And in the coming months, we are excited to share more about a deeper dive we intend to take into this work. So watch for more information coming soon.
Throughout the evening, a central theme has been the partnership and collaboration that is required for generosity to have maximum impact on our region. So to set the stage for one way that we will live into our first focus area of igniting generosity, I am honored to introduce our speaker for this evening's event. Deb Markley is co-founder and managing director of the Center for Rural Entrepreneurship, a national nonprofit organization, and senior vice president with Locus Impact Investing, a partner of the center. Deb brings over 30 years of experience in community economic development. Her field-based research has been presented in academic journals as well as national public policy organizations and congressional committees. Deb has exciting information to share about our region and will inspire us about the opportunities and the possibilities. Please join me in giving Deb a warm Inland Northwest welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to put this down. Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you to Innovia Foundation for inviting me to come and leave the very hot temperatures, 100 degrees in North Carolina, and come to fall. So I'm really experiencing this and enjoying it. I got in yesterday and had a chance to walk along Riverside Park and really enjoy a little bit of Spokane. So thank you for having me here. I'm going to spend some time tonight talking about igniting generosity and rooting wealth in this region. And I'll talk some more about that term, rooting wealth. But first, I want to answer a pretty simple question, which is, who am I? As Shelley said, I have about 35 years. It keeps creeping up there with every year, working in the field of community economic development. A lot of it in rural communities like you have in this region. For about 20 of those years, I worked as the co-director of the Center for Rural Entrepreneurship, a national organization that I co-founded with my colleague Don Mackey. And we spent a lot of time in rural communities helping them embrace entrepreneurship as an economic development strategy because we really believed that it was the most promising way for them to build a stronger economic future. And during that time, we really came to see the value and the promise of community philanthropy. We saw communities that were doing better because they had a community foundation. They had an institution that was committed to rooting wealth in that region over time. And because of that interest in community philanthropy, about 3 years ago in 2017, we brought the center into an organization called Virginia Community Capital, a community development financial institution that focuses on the state of Virginia, to launch yet another, see a theme here, another national organization, Locus Impact Investing. Locus works with place-focused foundations like Innovia and other community foundations that want to invest more of their assets, not just their money, but their human capital as well, in their regions to create more prosperous, vibrant communities. And it's that work that has really excited my interest in the last 3 years to the potential behind philanthropy. During the time of the center, we developed a tool called Transfer of Wealth Analysis. It's a tool that Locus is now using with community foundations, but over the past 20 years or so, we've done analysis for about half the counties in the country, for lots of different kinds of foundations, from statewide foundations to individual counties. It's an analysis that was based on some research done by Boston College in the late 1990s. We adapted it as a way to help states and regions and counties really understand the phenomenon associated with a transfer of wealth and the potential that it could have. Because there is one fact out there, and that is that wealth is transferring across the generations. It's happening. We can't do a lot about it. Over time, the farms we build, the ranches we build, the businesses we build, the homes we own are going to pass from our hands to the next generation. We may sell them, we may transfer a business, but that process is happening. And what we wanted to do with the transfer of wealth analysis was really to help communities understand the potential behind it. So as Erin mentioned, the Locust staff and the Community Foundation staff, along with a group of advisors from the region, completed a transfer of wealth analysis for the Foundation's 20-county region over the past several months. What I'm going to do tonight, or this afternoon, since it's still light out there, is give you a really big picture perspective on this research. I'm not going to go into the model. Mason and I will be around afterwards if you have more technical questions. But I want to give you a big picture view of this analysis in the region and to talk about the potential behind it. Because the analysis we did, while important, is only a starting point. The real value comes with what you all choose to do with that analysis as a region and the impact that you can have. The starting point for the analysis is to figure out how much wealth exists in the region right now. And to do that, we use something called current net worth. It's an estimate, if you will, of how much wealth the households in this 20-county region hold today. That wealth is houses, farms, businesses, savings, retirement accounts. We net out the mortgages and all the liabilities and come up with a current net worth figure. That figure for this 20-county region is a really big number. $293 billion held in all the households in the region. About the GDP of Chile, bigger than the Disney Corporation, a little bit smaller than Walmart. But it's a big number. The next thing we do, however, is to look at the demographics of this region and try to get a sense of what part of this wealth is going to transfer over the next 10 years and the next 50 years. It's part of the model that we use, but again, it's part of this natural phenomenon. People live in a place, they build wealth over time. At different parts of their lifetime, they're either spending a lot of their wealth while they're building their families, or they're beginning to build up that nest egg to hopefully get them into retirement. So we use demographics and other secondary data to come up with a good estimate of what's going to transfer from one generation to the next over the next 10 and 50 years. Again, for this region, some pretty big numbers. Almost $42 billion over the next decade is expected to move from one generation to the next. Farms that are passing on, businesses that are passing on, estates that are settled when one generation passes on. Over 50 years, that number is about $376 billion. So significant wealth that's going to be transferring. The challenge is, and we find this particularly in rural places, when that wealth transfers, where does it go? It's likely to go to Seattle or Boston or Austin, because in many of our communities, our young folks don't live here anymore. And so part of what we've tried to do with this analysis is to help communities, community foundations, members of the community really understand that this process is happening, that you've got wealth in this region, it is going to transfer, and to try to identify the opportunity behind that. And that opportunity is to think about how can we root some small bit of that wealth that's been created in this region, how do we root it here for the benefit of this region for generations to come? That's the opportunity. And so what I want to do is just to get you to imagine for a couple of minutes. Imagine if we could capture just 5% of that $42 billion that's going to transfer in this 20-county region over the next decade. It's just a number. There's no magic behind just 5%. It's a small enough number to hopefully be realistic. If we could capture just 5% of that wealth, let people give it to their kids, let them donate to their university or college, their faith community, but how about just 5% for this region, captured into a community endowment, would generate $2 billion of new endowment in this region over the next decade. And the power of an endowment is, if we have that $2 billion, it gets invested and generates money that can contribute to grant making. You heard about almost $7 million of grant making done by Innovia. If we capture just 5% into a community endowment, we'd have the potential for almost $114 million of annual grant making. Think about what that would mean to the Open Books, Open Doors initiative, or to arts, or to other aspects of this community. But I don't want you to stop there. I want you to keep imagining for a minute. Imagine that we took just 5% of that endowment, that $2 billion of new endowment that we have. We took just 5% of it, and instead of investing it in Wall Street, we invested it here. We put it into loans for houses or loans to entrepreneurs that would generate the kind of community benefit that we get from our grant making, but also would return some money to the endowment so that that could revolve over time. We'd have resources to construct 1,500 new community facilities, libraries, fire halls, or support 15,000 business loans. Just imagine the change, the transformation that would happen in this region with just 5%. Now, as I mentioned, we've done this analysis in lots of places, and at some point when we're working with a community foundation or their board, staff, community members, these numbers become really hard to get your heads around. $2 billion, another $114 million of grant making. So I want to stop for a minute and move away from the numbers and leave you with 4 takeaways for today. And with each takeaway, I'm going to illustrate it with a story of a community foundation that's actually taken action and done something in the community to try to capture some of this wealth and deploy it for community benefit. So the first takeaway, and I've alluded to this before, it's not about the money, it's about the dream. It's not about the money, it's about the dream. The money is certainly important. I don't want to downplay that. Having $114 million of extra dollars for grant making would make a tremendous difference. But that money isn't going to come without a vision, without understanding why we're building this endowment. What are we trying to tackle in this community? What's the impact we want? So let me start by taking you to Holt County, Nebraska. Holt County is a rural county. It is rural by any of the many definitions of rural that exist in the federal government right now. Has about 10,000 people. The population peaked in 1920. This is a tale of 2 counties. About a decade ago, this was a county that had been losing population for a long time, but they had a small group of young adults, young families, some of whom had chosen to stay in the county, some of whom moved back to have their kids near grandparents, cousins. And that group of young families had a really different vision for that county. They saw a future that was different than most of the people that were living there. And they wanted to do something about it. And the county decided to create a leadership program to begin to focus on these young adults and to build their skills to take on the leadership challenges in that community. At the same time, there was, in Holt County, an old farmer. Name was Rudy Ellis, born and raised in the county, a very successful farmer, very successful businessman, and a bachelor. And like any smart business person, as he got a little older, he decided to go visit his financial planner and get his affairs in order. And he walked into the financial planner and said, I want to give my estate to the university when I die. And the financial planner, much to his credit, note to Innovia, make good friends of those financial planners, said, but Rudy, you were born and raised in this county. Why wouldn't you want to give some money back to the community foundation for the benefit of the community? And he said, I was a successful businessman because I made smart investments. Why would I invest in a dying community? Why would I invest in a dying community? Fortunately, those young adults didn't hear Rudy's message. They went through this leadership program and they decided as their project they were going to create a countywide economic development organization. Never had one before. County had 3 towns, didn't work together. Those young folks said, we are never going to create a different future if we don't start working together. So they created an economic development organization. A young woman from that community took the leadership of it. They decided they were really going to focus on entrepreneurship. They were going to help people who had businesses now expand those businesses, make sure that no successful business was faced with closing its doors when someone wanted to retire. They engaged alumni to try to attract them back. They really focused hard on building up this community. And they started having some success. Some businesses on Main Street, some young families coming back. That's a woman who came and took over the pharmacist. That young family came back bringing 4 kids. They started to have class sizes increasing in the elementary school. And someone in that community was watching. And Rudy Ellis, a few years after this work started, went into his financial planner's office and said, I've changed my mind. And he left $2 million to the community and foundation to endow the economic development work so they don't have to raise money every year to pay their staff. It comes from that endowment. Those young people had a dream, they made it visible, and at least one donor in that community was watching. Let me tell you one more story about a dream, and I'll take you to Michigan for this one. Barry County, Michigan, not as rural as Holt County, Nebraska, but it is in a little wedge between Battle Creek and Lansing, so a relatively rural community in Michigan. And they had a real issue in that community with young people graduating from high school with no plans for continuing education. They weren't going to college, they were going to community college. They weren't going anywhere. And so their CEO, Bonnie Geddes, went to a conference and heard one statistic, one piece of data that created a vision in her mind for that community. And that piece of data was that a child who graduates from high school with just $500 in a savings account is much more likely to go to college and to finish. And she brought that back and said, I want to start a children's savings account with $50 in it for every kindergartner in Barry County. And she found a gullible donor who said, we'll pilot this. And they started. They went into the kindergarten. They partnered with a community bank. They got each child a savings account. The kids could do things in their classes to get some coins. The bankers would come. They'd make their deposits. And they engaged the parents and the teachers. And about 3 months into this, the donor came by and said to Bonnie, this is really amazing. These kids are really excited about saving. what do you think it would cost to endow this? And so the two of them put their heads together, figured out what that number was. The donor wrote a check, and now they have a children's savings account program, Kickstart to Career, that is fully endowed. So every kindergartner in Barry County, homeschooled, parochial school, public school, private school, will have a $50 savings account started for them the day they walk into kindergarten. This year, next year, and for generations to come. A dream made real that really powered and ignited some generosity. So the second takeaway, any place can do this. This is not about a strategy for big urban places or really wealthy places. Any community can do this. And to prove a point, I'm going to take you back to Nebraska for a minute, to Shickley. Shickley, Nebraska, the booming metropolis, has 341 people. Almost 700 in the school district, though. They are very quick to point out. Shickley, being in Nebraska, was part of the original transfer of wealth study that we did for Nebraska back in the late 90s, 2000. Their 50-year transfer of wealth opportunity was $2 billion. They set a goal to capture 5% of that, and then realized, I think we're going to have every single household in this community donate to the community foundation. So they set a goal of having 100% participation. They haven't quite achieved that. They're over 80% of the households in that community that contribute to the community foundation. One of the strategies they used to try to capture this money was to create something called the Longhorn Club. The Longhorn was the mascot in the school. And it was a program, an endowment building effort for young families. So young families would agree to give $25 a month in perpetuity into the community endowment. And so over time, over about a decade, Shickley Community Foundation actually has built almost $2 million in endowed assets, and they have $2 million in planned gifts. They are one of the stars, the little town that could in Nebraska. But aside from the money, which again is important, but it's what you can do with it, when they created the Longhorn Club, they realized, wow, we've actually got young families that we could talk to now, figure out what's going on. And so they asked them, what's it like to live in Shickley? What are your challenges? And they heard consistently from every family, early childhood education, quality childcare. They had people who couldn't work at the kinds of jobs that they were skilled to do because they couldn't find childcare in Shickley. And so the Community Foundation sort of owned that, took that to heart, and started talking to everybody, faith communities, the school system. How do we solve this? And kept hitting a roadblock. And then they had a leadership change in the school district, a new superintendent. And as the foundation had done, they brought that to that superintendent and said, what do you think we can do? And he said, we have an empty building across the street from the elementary school. What if we renovated it? And then what if we hired the child care director as part of the school district so we could pay them more and they'd get benefits? And working with the Community Foundation and the state, they were able to create Shickley Child Care Center. Everybody's employed by the school system so that they can have higher quality staff. It's now become an attraction for young families who want to come to Shickley because they know their kids can go to a high quality child care. So the little town that could. This is for every community. The third takeaway is the need to build the foundation that the community needs. Now, I am passionate about community foundations, maybe not as passionate as Aaron and Shelley are, but I think community foundations are phenomenal institutions because they're so flexible. They can play different kinds of roles. They can convene like they're doing here. They can advocate. They have different tools. They can make grants. They can do investments. They have different kinds of assets, all the the board and the staff, as well as the money, which is important. But the really creative, effective, innovative foundations are not just using those tools. They're really thinking about what is the foundation that this community needs right now. And no foundation has been better at that than the Southwest Initiative Foundation. They focus on a multi-county region in the southwestern corner of Minnesota, a region that has faced in the past a crisis that should not be unfamiliar to you all. They're an ag region. They have a lot of farmers. And as those farmers are getting to retirement, they face a bit of a crisis because a lot of their wealth, their assets, are tied up in their land. And so they have a choice to make, often a really painful choice, that might mean selling the farm. And when that happens, often it means that that land isn't in agriculture anymore. And for the foundation, that was unacceptable. Not because of the loss of farmland, that was important, but because of the loss of identity and culture. This was an ag region. How could we not have a really vibrant family farming culture here? And so they started working, the foundation started working with a donor who was at this stage of his life to create Keep It Growing, which is a way for a farmer, when they get to that point when they want to retire, to give the farm to the foundation and have the foundation continue to manage that farm in perpetuity. The farmer gets a charitable deduction, also gets a flow of income from the land. The foundation manages the farm, often with a tenant farmer who had been on the land before. The foundation gets a stream of income, and they have made a commitment to take that revenue and put it back out into the same communities as grant dollars. So if this is sounding familiar to you, this was the foundation stepping into the role that the community needed at that time. If that sounds like a familiar potential crisis in a region like this, with agriculture being important, you are really lucky because Innovia has that skill set. They've managed farmland before. And it's about more than just getting a farm, which a lot of community foundations do. They get a farm and they liquidate it, and the money goes into the endowment. This is really an example, and you have one right here, of that staying in, the land staying in production agriculture into the future. Just a quick side note for the Southwest Initiative Foundation. They created Keep It Growing a number of years ago. It's become very successful in a model. They have moved on to the next crisis in that region, which is twofold: really high rates of child poverty and a really significant child care crisis, the loss of child care slots. And they're stepping into that to become that community foundation that the community needs now. Final takeaway: set goals to make progress. None of this work happens by just saying, there's an opportunity to capture $2 billion into an endowment out there. It happens because people create a vision around this and set some really concrete goals to make it happen. And no foundation has done that better than the Nebraska Community Foundation. NCF, the Nebraska Community Foundation, is a statewide community foundation. They don't do their own programming or grant making. They are the lead foundation for about 100 community funds that work under the umbrella of the Nebraska Community Foundation. So when we did our first transfer of wealth analysis in Nebraska, there were two big ahas that happened, and you can see one from that quote. First of all, that analysis showed that there was a lot of wealth in Nebraska. That was not an image that most Nebraskans had. They were good Midwesterners who didn't think they had a lot. But there was a lot of wealth in Nebraska, and it really opened their eyes to the potential. The other thing was a little bit more concerning, and that was that map down there and the red counties, those rural counties, where this transfer of wealth was happening very soon. It was going to happen the peak transfer was expected to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. And so they had this urgent call to action as a foundation to say, we've got to act now to try to capture that wealth, because the reason it was happening quickly was the population was aging, and they had also experienced tremendous demographic change. A lot of people moving away as young folks and not coming home. So they recognize if we don't capture it now, the opportunity is lost to us forever. And so they created this Just 5% campaign. Again, Just 5% was just pulled out of the air. It seemed like an achievable thing. It's not some magic number. But the really cool thing is, it wasn't just the statewide foundation saying that. It was a lot of these individual communities setting Just 5% goals, like Shickley and Holt County. And about 25% of those communities have met that goal already. Some of the more aggressive ones are like, 5%, we just met that, how about 10? And really trying to go after that capture. We did an update of the TOES study in Nebraska, and you can see the number up there. The Just 5% capture is about $30 billion. And you can see in their 2018 report, they've got about 300 planned gifts and almost $70 million already captured within that state. So let me sum up a little bit and leave you with just a couple of quick thoughts. This is about igniting generosity for regional impact. I really believe in that. I believe in the potential behind it. I'm really excited, and the work that we've done with Locus Impact Investing over the last 3 years has been rejuvenating for me at a point in my career where I thought I was going to coast down. We've seen a tremendous excitement among community foundations in particular, but other foundations as well that really care about place, to use their leadership to try to help communities really address the most critical issues and challenges that they face. And I think the stories that I've shared, the stories that you heard before from when Shelley and Aaron were up here, really demonstrate foundations taking that kind of leadership role. I think they also demonstrate the power of an endowment to take some small amount of the wealth that was created in a place like this, with the farmers and the ranchers and the entrepreneurs in your communities, in your tribal nations, who've built wealth over time, to capture just a small part of it and make sure that it stays rooted in this region, benefiting this region for generations to come. And just imagine what you could do with that generosity and that endowment. The affordable housing that could be built, the businesses that could be supported, the downtowns that could be renovated. I was so excited to be able to come here, to be invited by Aaron and Shelley, to come and talk about the transfer of wealth analysis that we did with them. It's nice to know we played at least a small part in Innovia setting its sights and its leadership muscle on capturing some of this wealth over time. But I have one final thing I want to leave you with. Innovia is not going to do this alone. No community foundation does. If you think about those stories, there were partnerships with school systems and community banks and parents and students and teachers and donors. All of you in this room and all of the partnerships that exist across this region. So I expect an invitation in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years to come back and see the kind of impact that has been ignited through your generosity over the coming decades. I will be here to answer questions later on, but thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Deb, for sharing with us the possibilities and for helping us launch this initiative that will continue to transform lives and communities in this region. And thank you also for reminding us that it is not about the numbers. As we mentioned earlier, it's about the stories, it's about those lives and the communities that we are changing. And so many of Deb's stories today actually reflect the realities and the opportunities that exist in our region. As I was listening to the Shickley story, I kept thinking about last week when we were sitting in our communities, and one of the major issues that we are discussing in the community was lack of quality, affordable childcare, and the fact that it costs more for a parent to work, to pay for childcare than they would be able to make at a job. And so there are many parent working households in our rural communities, and I'm sure here in Spokane as well, because of the lack of quality, affordable childcare. So those stories actually reflect the reality and the opportunities that we face. So imagine the impact on our communities with just 5%. The opportunity is ours.
As we move forward, we will share out all of this data with our partners across the region, and we are going to be asking you to work with us for 5% for our region. Imagine the possibilities. Imagine the impact. Imagine the impact of 5% for arts and culture or community revitalization.
Imagine the impact to increase access to health care in rural communities.
Imagine the impact of 5% to endow your favorite nonprofit for generations to come.
Imagine the impact of 5% to ensure that every child in Eastern Washington and North Idaho has the opportunity to excel academically and in life.
Imagine the impact of 5% for nonprofits and charitable groups working to increase equity and inclusion for people in our region who have experienced disparity and injustice.
And imagine the impact of 5% to preserve our environment and ensure our region is a place that is resilient and sustainable for generations to come.
As we've said throughout this evening, we cannot do this work alone. It takes all of us. So we're going to be inviting you to join us in imagining the possibility and the impact that 5% could have for our region, the impact it could have in your community. As we conclude our program, you'll notice that our transfer of wealth slides will continue to scroll on the screens behind us. We've also placed some large storyboards out in the foyer. They're conveniently and strategically placed right next to the wine. Would you please take a few moments as we wrap up our program and review the data? And Shelley and I, Deb, Mason, the rest of our staff, we're going to be out there to answer questions, to talk with you, to dream a little bit with you. We want your suggestions.
As we bring our program to a close, we want to share one final story of generosity. So often we think that it's the large mega million gifts that make a transformational impact on a community. But we believe that generosity comes in many forms, from simple acts of kindness to community-wide impact. Generosity has a way of igniting more generosity. This next story is such a story of 3 young ladies whose lives were transformed and whose generosity was ignited.
When it comes to kids with cleft lip and palate, a lot of people think it's just a simple surgery and then you're done. Really, it's a lot more complex than that. When we found out about the whole cleft situation, we were put in touch with Lori Vesey through my OB.
And I called her and I emailed her, and she was in my living room within just a couple days.
She gave us her personal cell phone number, which no one does these days, and she answered our calls and texts day and night. There was nothing that she didn't respond to, whether it was cleft related or just being a new parent related.
The vision for the Lori Vesey Fund started with Lori's generosity. As a nurse and team coordinator for the Inland Empire Maxillofacial Team, a program operated out of Providence Sacred Heart's Children's Hospital, Lori spent her career serving and caring for children and their families born with cleft lip and palate. Her generosity of time and care has blessed countless families in a time of life that for many families is full of emotional and financial struggle. And for 3 young moms in Spokane, Lori's generosity and care inspired them to do something tangible to honor her. Lori's generosity ignited their generosity.
We knew that she was going to be retiring. She'd kind of been threatening for the last, couple years.
I mean, what do you give somebody who has done so much for you and your family?
We wanted to figure out a way that would honor her, but would also sort of do what we want, which is to take care of our community and pay it forward. So we thought, what better way than some type of foundation that could help other families in need.
And then I get this text from Natalie saying, you've worked in nonprofit, Rebecca. Do you know anything about starting some sort of a scholarship or a grant program? Or we didn't even really quite know what the language was supposed to be surrounding it. So I called a mentor and previous boss of mine. Then maybe a week later, I got a text saying, I found a community foundation in your area called Innovia, and they seem really great. They seem like the people that you want to contact.
I don't know a thing about foundations or how to run them, and Innovia really took that legwork out of it. It's really nice to be able to focus on helping families and not worry about, well, where does that money go and how do we make sure it doesn't just sit there?
I actually work in the cleft community myself, and so on a daily basis, I see the need.
We know that it's a financial burden.
They don't have the funds to pay for all their care, like speech therapy. And the choice is, even though they would do it, we can't afford that. We have to keep a roof over our head. We have to feed our kids.
Being able to just get some of that money out the door to actually in the hands of the people who need it is the most exciting part. It gives me goosebumps.
The journey's hard. And what we want is to just make it a little easier, just like Lori did for us.
It's very humbling. I felt like I'm just doing my job.
Lori and those young moms are with us tonight. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for igniting generosity and transforming lives in your own ways. As you have seen this evening, people's lives are transformed because of the generosity of everyone in this community. We would invite you to join us as we continue to ignite generosity to change lives and communities in the region that we serve.
Thank you for being here, for making all of this possible. Would you please join me in having another round of applause to all of our generous sponsors and donors this evening. And we want to invite you to stay. This is a celebration. We are here tonight to celebrate generosity, the generosity of all of you in this room and everyone in this region who cares about the place that we live and that we love. Please join us. Grab some of the collateral on your tables. Review the storyboards in the back and learn more about this transfer of wealth opportunity. Share with us your ideas about the impact and the possibility. And don't forget your takeaways.
The buffet line has opened, so we have appetizers for you, and we encourage you to grab a glass of wine, visit with old friends, make some new ones, and go forth and ignite generosity in your community. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you.
Thank you.